Right, good morning everybody, and welcome to this first in a series of gender pay gap seminars that we're running, Fawcett Society is running with Neil Stewart Associates. We are going to be running this one plus another couple of seminars in June, on the 13th of June, and then another big conference again in October this year. So I'll say a little bit more about that at the end of today. We're also live streaming it and recording the event, so there's quite a few more people watching the event online, and we'll be watching it subsequently. So when we do get to the Q&A discussion, there will be a microphone for you to use, and it's important that everything we say is captured in the microphones. Just a bit of housekeeping. I don't think there's a fire alarm planned, but if one goes off, please follow the fire exits in the usual way and assemble outside. My name is Smethers and I'm Chief Executive of the Fawcett Society, and before I get into the presentation I just wanted to say a little bit about why we're doing this, why we're running these seminars and why we're so heavily engaged with this issue. And that's because we focus very heavily on gender equality and women's rights, and we've been doing so for 150 years, and actually financial inequality and the gender pay gap is one of those absolutely totemic issues. It's one of those fundamentals that we just haven't got right in our economy, and that's why this is a really important issue for us. We're going to be tweeting today, so hashtag gender pay, and Hinali from Fawcett is going to be tweeting as Fawcett, but please do join in and contribute to the discussion online. We've been asked to turn mobile phones off, but actually you can't tweet if you turn your phone off, so I don't know what the deal is on that. Silence, I'm told. Okay, so I've turned my phone off because I'm a bit too close to all the equipment, but it'd be good if we kept the discussion going. And then we've got NSA staff at the back of the room if you need any assistance with anything. Obviously, help yourself to tea and coffee through the morning. So we've got a key date coming up. The gender pay gap regulations are going to be published, well, officially implemented, from the 6th of April. So D-Day is arriving. Although we've got another D-Day today, of course, with Brexit, but it's a very different D-Day. And then next year, in April next year, is obviously when the information all goes public. So it's really good that we spend this time in the run-up to that preparing. I know a lot of you have already done a great deal of thinking and practical work on it, and we're going to hear from some fantastic speakers this morning who've got a lot to tell us about what they've found and what their experience has been. So I'm going to crack on with the presentation. We're going to have a panel discussion later, but if there's anything in my presentation that you want to ask me about either during or afterwards, I'm very happy to take quick questions, but there will be an opportunity for full discussion later on. So this is me and this is Fawcett. This is what I'm trying to cover in the discussion. Perhaps if I come over here, you can make sure everyone can see. So what it is and why does it matter? I think we do have to remind ourselves why we're doing all of this, because quite a lot of people say, it's just, there's no point. Why are we just producing all this data and there's no point in doing it? And that fundamental sort of lack of belief in the purpose of it, I think, is the thing that will undermine it. So reminding ourselves of why it is important is valuable. Quickly going over what we have to do and what you're likely to find, and then a bit about communication, but we're going to go on to all of these in more detail with our various speakers. So the gender pay gap, what is it? It's the difference in hourly pay between women and men, we know that. Full-time or part-time, mean or median, the different ways of measuring it, and the regulations obviously require you to capture both the mean and median average figures. And that's quite important because they do tell you slightly different things, so it's worth knowing both. And it isn't the same as unequal pay, and I know that is one of the probably the biggest concern that employers have got as they go through this process, is that the numbers will be interpreted as illustrating unequal pay within the organisation. So unequal pay may be there, and it may be part of what forms a gender pay gap, but it isn't one and the same thing, and the gender pay gap figure isn't the same as unequal pay. And it's obviously complex with multiple causes, and there's a lot of work that we've done and others have done in highlighting what those causes are. And part of the purpose of this whole exercise, in terms of looking at the gender pay gap, is to get employers to think about what those causes are and fundamentally what they can do about it. So various numbers have been bandied around, but these are the sort of McKinsey numbers. 150 billion added to the economy by 2025, 840,000 more women in work if we close the pay gap, and 35% from women in more productive sectors. So you'd be putting more women into those more productive sectors of the economy if we took the action needed to close the pay gap. So that is why, fundamentally, government is bothered about it, if we're really honest. I mean, they may just genuinely believe in equality, and that's true. Some of them, I'm sure, do. But really, this is why it's become a priority. And that's fine. I'm happy with that. And what it represents, as I've said, is effectively a productivity gap. We're wasting women's talents and skills. And that's really what we're trying to address. And what will it mean for your own organisation? Well, higher financial performance, better board performance and decision making, because you'll get more women into senior roles, more diversity into those decision making roles, and you might actually get the best person for the job. Bit of an old-fashioned thought, but if we did genuinely match talent and ability with role, just think how significant that could be. So we did a survey some time ago, and this is just giving you a sense of what do people think about this stuff, because I think, it does matter how this issue plays into public expectations and opinion. And then, we basically found that people were in favour of equality. 9 in 10 want the women in their lives to have equality of opportunity with men. This is what men were saying to us. 39%. Over a third of men believe they would benefit if we had a society where men and women are more equal. And 7 in 10 men believe a more equal society between women and men would be better for the economy. So that sounds pretty good. And then we asked about whose job is it? So it matters to me that my employer takes steps to reduce their gender pay gap. Men were actually, quite a few of them were likely to agree with that, 39%, but 60%, but 59% of women agreed with that. So they're looking to employers to do something about it. They see it as an employer's job to fix it. And this, similarly, whose responsibility is reducing the gender pay gap? So again, women clearly seeing employers with a significant role to play, but actually quite a lot of men seeing it as an employer's job too. So that's why your employees, the wider public, are going to be looking to employers to do something about it. Now, I think the word transparency is a little bit loosely used in relation to gender pay gap reporting. So I think of it more in terms of accountability rather than transparency, simply because you're not handing over a great deal of detailed data to anyone. You're publishing a figure and you're putting a bit of narrative around it and hopefully a plan in place to address it, but you're not really giving people transparency. So I think, we can talk about that, so whether you think it is or isn't transparency. I think it's more about accountability and showing that you're doing something about the problem rather than transparency. And then what you would be required to do, and again, probably most of you will know this, there's lots of detailed guidance available from ACAS and others who are publishing on this, so we haven't tried to replicate their guidance. I've got links at the end of the presentation to all this material. I think the one figure that people are a bit anxious about, as well as the overall gap and how that might be interpreted, is how do we go about calculating the bonus gap? Because that is seen as a bit of a movable feast. What do we mean by bonus? What's in? What's calculated in? What's out of that? And again, ACAS have got guidance on that, and they've tried to address that, and they've tried to define what's in scope and what isn't. I think in practice, it's probably is the one where we're going to have the most creative figures, should we say. I think that wouldn't be surprising. But for me, the value is in doing it as opposed to the number you get. So it doesn't mean we won't look at the number, doesn't mean we won't care about the number, but actually, when did any organisation before this year really even begin to think about what bonus payments their women were getting versus what their men were getting? And actually, if it makes anyone think about it and look at it, then I think that's a valuable exercise, because we begin to unlock, well, what are the problems? Why is this different? Why have we got this inequality in the first place? And that's the purpose of the exercise. And then looking at where women and men are in the organisation. And again, I doubt very many organisations systematically do that and have been doing that before now. So those figures will need to be published both on the organisation's own website and on the government's website that they're setting up for April next year. And there's nothing to stop people publishing early, but the deadline is April 2018, and the capture point is April 2017. So certainly what should you do? Comply with the regulations, we're bound to say that. Look afresh at the data in your organisation and think about what it's telling you, and use this as an opportunity to do that exploration, and definitely go one step further than the guidance, than the regulations require you to do, and put an action plan in place. We lobbied hard with GEO to say there should be a requirement to have an action plan. We didn't see the point of publishing a number without a plan to go with it. They didn't actually put that in, but I think it would be incredibly unwise for any organisation to just put their figures out there, create the impression that maybe they've got a problem and not say what they're going to do about it. So having a plan is pretty obvious, really. And then look for hotspots, look for the really significant things that might be driving it. And then the fundamental one, which I know a lot of organisations are coming to, is managing that internal and external communication. How do we tell people, explain what the figure is, explain what it means, what are they going to be looking for when they come to us, and when they see those figures, what are they going to be thinking about the organisation? And that's really fundamental. I think all the guidance I've seen so far doesn't really deal with that problem. And I think that's where certainly we and others are going to be focusing more of our efforts, because we think it's significant. So what are you likely to see? Well, we know women concentrated at lower levels, segregated by role, possibly an equal value issue. I wouldn't be surprised if some people find that they've got an equal value claim within the organisation. Might be a good idea to address it if you do find it. It doesn't mean your data will be out there for someone to bring an equal value claim against you, but it is possible that you might find it through the process of doing this exercise. So, and that is covered by law, that is unequal pay, and that is where you could potentially be challenged, so that's why I'm mentioning it. Bonuses favouring men, well yes, we expect to see that. Pipeline problems, absolutely. And practice issues such as, informal decision making, and we'll talk about more of this again as we go through, but the kinds of things that are going to be causing the problems that you're seeing through the pay gap. So just the story behind it is really what we're talking about. And then it takes you to a whole heap of things. So we think the gender pay gap is a figure we're publishing, but actually it unlocks a whole host of issues that you then need to think about. And that's why it's a significant measure, that's why this is a significant exercise. So organisational culture, equality and inclusion practices, the whole way you deal with flexibility, pay and leave within the organisation, people development, opportunities for promotion, bullying, harassment even, and recruitment and retention practices. And maybe there's probably more I could have put on that list, but they're all big fundamental things that any employer would have to be thinking about. And the gender pay gap could take you to any number of these. So, understand it and why it's there. So genuinely look behind the number. Be open and honest about it. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to just massage the figures. Be open and honest about it. Focus on action to close it, not the gap itself. And see it as an opportunity. And I can't say that often enough and loudly enough. I really think this is a fantastic opportunity. And be on a journey and take people with you. Because we're all on a journey. This whole issue, we've been on a journey for like 40, 50 years. We're all on a journey with it, and it isn't going to close overnight. Absolutely it's not. But I really think there is an opportunity for every employer who participates in this and does it properly to really drive progressive change. And then think about where you are, and not only where you as an organisation are, but where your people might be in relation to this, because I do think it's important to think about where some of the individuals might be within the organisation. So, on a scale of being informed or uninformed and poor practice or good practice, where would you put yourselves? And clearly you're not here because you're not uninformed. You come to the room. You clearly are not interested in poor practice because you've bothered to come to this sort of event. So, I don't expect you to be here. But some people might say, actually, I don't really agree with the point of this. I don't see the point of it. I don't see why we should do it. It's a notional exercise. I'll pay lip service to it, but I'm not doing it. Or those who are at the bottom, we're pretty good here. I'm sure we haven't got anything to worry about. Sort of complacency corner. not really an issue for us. Don't have to worry about it. And then in the good practice section, I include the people who might have reservations about it there, but who are prepared to go along with it and to do it, because they think actually we've just got to make sure we're compliant. And we've got a bit of an issue in that there is no penalties as yet for employers who don't comply. So effectively the penalty will be how you appear in those league tables that will be published on the website, whereas we think there ought to be penalties for those who don't comply. And that may yet appear somewhere down the line, depending on what the participation and compliance rates are. So those are a few links, and we'll make these slides available to you through the NSA website anyway. Has anyone got any particular questions before we move on to Sharon's presentation? Anyone think this isn't summing up, or you wouldn't recognise yourself in any of these corners and I've missed something out, or anything you wanted to check in with me about before we go on? But a lot of what we'll cover through the morning will effectively pick up a number of themes. I'm just kind of setting out a bit of a scene really in that. Great. Okay, yes.
One question. Sorry. Thank you for a very interesting introduction. My name's Andrew Kennedy. I'm the head of HR for English Heritage. I can't think of any organisation I've worked in when I've been in HR roles in the last dozen years or so where any organisation I know would deliberately have different pay rates for men and women. But I take it what we're likely to see through this exercise are other practices that result in pay not being equal between the two genders. Have I got the right end of the stick there when I say that if we're likely to see more women in more junior roles, that's because we all know that in society a significant proportion of women are working at the level below the potential because of poor employment practices, i.e. poor access to flexible working, that sort of thing. I take it we're likely to see more of these types of issues than deliberate different pay rates for men and women, I would imagine.
Yes, I think that's true. But as I said, you may well come across equal value issues which are less obvious. And I think that's often where employers can go a bit wrong on unequal pay, because they think it's just about same pay for the same work. And that's definitely covered by pay legislation, but it's also equal value. And there are a number of equal value claims that are ongoing at the moment, both in local government, in the private sector. And it is about saying, well, actually, why is he paid more for doing that job over there when I'm paid this for doing this job over here? And I think I can make a case that my pay should be the same as his. That's basically what an equal value claim is. And that definitely is, thanks to the European Union, covered by equal pay legislation. So, and I'm not saying definitively you'll find that, I'm just simply flagging it because I think it's not an easy one, and it tends to sort of, particularly when you've got women and men segregated in different types of roles, so like a warehouse role versus a supermarket shop floor role. The supermarket shop floor role is paid less per hour than the employee in the warehouse. 90% of the employees in the warehouse are men. The shop floor workers overwhelmingly are women. That gives you an equal value problem. So that's the kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the bigger picture is all about the kind of employment practices which lead to women working below their potential, which is a problem for any business, because actually you don't want your staff to be working below their potential. You want them working at their potential, don't you? Because otherwise you're wasting that talent in your organisation. So, anything else from me before we move on to hear from everyone else, which will all be far more informative than mine, I'm sure. Great, thank you.